The following conversation with Jenny Perlin took place on Manhattan's West Side on December 19th, 2022. Jenny Perlin makes films based on obscure or forgotten histories. Combining 16mm film, digital video, and text-based animation, she creates absorbing and often personal narratives that bring events of the past to bear on the present. Your Instagram handle is Twilight Arc, and since we are Twilight Talks, where does Twilight Arc come from?
Oh, that's a great question. In 2016, I made a film, and it is called Twilight Arc. Is one of the symbols used by an inventor named Mary Hallett Greenewalt. She created a piano that when you played it, it would also spray kind of colors and light patterns and things like that. So I made this short film about synesthesia, kind of the history of color organs, and Twilight Arc is, it's from there.
Your subject matter in your films all seems to be pretty consistent, except maybe Bunker feels a little bit sort of different, like more contemporary in some ways, but you seem to go for subjects that span a lot of sort of esoteric history, science, visual arts, these kinds of things. Do you have a narrative for how you choose these subjects? Is there any coherence to it in your own mind?
Yeah, there's a lot of coherence. I mean, I work out of a kind of wellspring of interest, like you said, in history, science, visual art, but my main inspiration is literature and the history of literature, which is what I studied at university. And that's really where I get my ideas. So I kind of like to climb into books and see where they take me and see what questions they bring out. So a long time ago, I made a film called Perseverance and How to Develop It. And it came into existence because I found a self-help book from 1910 at a thrift store. And from there, after reading it, I developed some ideas about Freud and Henry Ford and the history of self-help in the United States and what it's really designed to do, which is just to keep people working.
Didn't Ford apply that to like factory techniques or something like that, which is a very weird, I mean, Americans are known for kind of the implementation of systems in mass production, but also self-help seems like a perfect kind of screwy, like psychological profile of the United States.
Absolutely, and the book itself, it was part of a 10-part self-help series, and it was teaching people how to do very fine motor tasks, which were almost identical to what you would have to do to put together a car engine on the assembly line. So, you know, my interests come out of books, and out of talking to people and gathering their stories as well.
I always find it interesting, as I've taught and you teach creative students, you know, they're kind of finding their way in life and they're often in search of like their medium, their subject matter, these questions are really present for them. But I always find it interesting when people find a form or create a form that's very particular to them. And can you talk about how you came to sort of the different formats and talk about the different formats you use?
I use 16mm film, and I like to think about using analog material as a way to invite people to read together with me. Whether or not that's reading on a screen, handwritten texts, or by putting together kind of via association some of the relationships that I'm hoping that they'll accept the invitation to do.
You think it has more of an immediacy or something like that? Intimacy?
In the film installations that I do, most of the time the projections are quite small. I don't want to overwhelm a viewer. I'd like to ask a viewer to sort of come closer and maybe gather together and read collectively. That's really my hope.
You're the stand-in for the viewer in a way, right? Because you're kind of creating the experience where the viewer understands your frustrations or tensions or whatever it is in relation to the subject you're filming. The style of it makes that come through, right?
I'm myself. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a stand-in for the viewer because I intervene in the conversation. And for cinema verite, of course, you're not supposed to be thought of at all.
Right.
In the course of Bunker, I start in a cinema verite style, and then it sort of becomes this almost portrait of myself as a person negotiating these ideas and these issues and getting a little bit seduced by them also in the process.
Let's talk about Bunker. Let's start at the beginning. It's your first feature film, right? So full length. Talk about how you came to Bunker as a subject.
I'd been interested in Cold War infrastructure for decades. partly because of where I grew up in the Midwest, which was riddled with bunkers and uranium processing plants disguised as Christmas tree farms and, all kinds of strange things that I didn't really know about. And had been interested in Cold War history quite a bit. I made a kind of featurette in 2012 called The Perlin Papers, which is made up of 8 short films that dive into the documents, primarily the overlooked or useless documents related to the case of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. And so from there, my interest in sort of contemporary models of Cold War infrastructure grew. And then, of course, after the election of 2016, I really wanted to go back to the Midwest where I'm from and kind of use these spaces almost as a lens onto what was happening in a part of the world that I hadn't been to for a really long time.
Because we're kind of in a bubble here in New York, right?
I had gotten a little impatient, to be honest, with the kind of categorical judgment of most of the United States, especially knowing that, where I come from, so many people were working really, really hard to make the election come out differently.
Yes.
And although the film Bunker isn't about tried and true lefties of the Midwest, I did want to go and see what had become of this place, and also to bring a kind of strange humanity to people who, would otherwise be really sort of cast off.
And how did you find this strange humanity? There are some strange humans in it, by our standards perhaps, but they're very sympathetic in many ways, right? So how did you find them and how did you make that connection?
I think I said in one conversation that there was a missile silo up in the Adirondacks that I had wanted to visit initially that had been super, restored by some architects, but that was no longer available for visits. And then I realized, or found on the internet, that the person who had sold that bunker to the architects was one Edward Peden of Kansas, a former history teacher in Topeka West High School. His website was very unique and very inviting, and so I contacted him directly. And that's how I reached out to pretty much everybody. Once I got started, I really didn't want to stop.
And it's sort of one single man after another, and you are alone with them in these kind of cavernous spaces. I mean, wondering if there's obviously tension at times, but also just the claustrophobia. Can you talk about like how it felt just being a woman by yourself in these strange environments with these people?
Initially, there was a kind of tension, more because the people living in these places or working in these places wanted to see me and see how I was going to approach them. Many of them had been used to TV news crews coming in, peppering them with a bunch of questions and leaving after an hour or so.
Right.
And so the slowness of the process and the spending a lot of time in their company allowed us to develop a way of talking to each other and also a way of not talking. There is a lot of sort of conversation in the worlds that I experienced about a kind of archaic forms of humanity that involve kind of feminine energy and masculine energy. And so there were conversations around that, but in the context of where I was, it seemed pretty normal.
How much you got out of them in terms of why they had chosen this lifestyle?
What I learned from these conversations was that feeling that they felt that they had arrived somewhere and that they could be at home or be themselves in a way that they couldn't be in the context where they had been living.
It seems like a kind of isolationism in some ways, like they're escaping something. Here's maybe a gender question too. It's always men, and it seems to me that there was a hesitancy in the part of women. Did you learn that?
In the spaces that I went to, there was more than hesitancy on the part of women. Most people's partnerships broke up as a result of that. It was fascinating to see other people that I met who made choices to, for example, maybe get a bunker at Vivos, but also an RV, and kind of travel around. Something kind of initiated this, whether or not it was a health scare or an emotional sort of situation that kind of propelled them. However, there are, other kinds of prepper and bunker communities that have women in them or are run by women. They might look different, and they, as far as I know, although I'm no expert, they don't seem to be underground.
Did you glean a sense of the politics of these people? Because I would just sort of assume that they were far right, but then I think they're maybe like so far left that it's like where right and left meet, right? A kind of like anarchist sort of sensibility versus any sort of political affiliation, right?
My sense is that, it sort of, everything sort of comes full circle. There's a kind of libertarianism to all of them, despite, where their initial politics came from. And that seems to be pretty much par for the course, actually.
Ed says something in one point. He's in this kind of scary control room, and he says, you think this is scary, or the world out there is scary. And it's very revealing in a very unspecific way. But I mean, what in general are they fleeing? I mean, what are they afraid of? And I know that they're all different in every case, but
it's hard to say. Depending on who I'm talking to, there's a sense of, Larry is clearly concerned about asteroids and meteors. People are concerned about water scarcity and the people who might be coming for resources, immigrants. Oh yes, and of course they're afraid of bioterrorism in the case of Fortitude. But they all of them are extremely actively engaged with following the news, all kinds of news.
Some people, it seems to me, are very susceptible to what they're being told, or they're very manipulated by it, I would say. And talk about maybe the sympathies you eventually developed for them as you were getting to know them.
Well, I tend to come to any interpersonal situation quite openly.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in figuring out or hearing from people how they got to where they are. What life choices brought me to sit in a bunker or to sit here and have this conversation. So I really do genuinely want to know what their desires and their hopes and their fears are.
I'm a historian, you're a historian.
That's kind.
Well, how does history relate to the present? It's something I think about all the time. Whenever I'm interested in something from the past or even from the recent past, why certain narratives actually feel like they might be useful or relevant to us right now. Do you think about that, and do you choose your subjects that way?
I do choose my subjects that way, very much so. I think often about, what it might have been like in the 1820s or 1950s to pick up a newspaper and read, and also be alarmed or be sort of encouraged by various things. And so in many ways, learning about history helps me keep some perspective and maybe keep my feet on the ground about what's going on, and also to realize that they function in a kind of spiral pattern, right? And we are actually kind of not repeating them, but experiencing the resonance of so many historical patterns in our everyday life. And so that's where I take my history. It also keeps me more grounded in many ways, just to realize that everybody thought when, the tram came into existence, or the light bulb, like the world was about to end. I'll follow you.
Okay. Upcoming screenings of Jenny Perlin's film Bunker will be held at 2220 Arts and Archives in Los Angeles, the Wexner Center for the Arts in Columbus, Ohio, and the Gene Siskel Film Center in Chicago. Bunker is available for streaming on projector.tv. The following conversation with Mary Ellen Bartley took place on Manhattan's West Side on December 20th, 2022. Mary Ellen Bartley photographs books and other domestic objects to create elegant and witty still lifes. Her series, based on the libraries of notable individuals such as Giorgio Morandi and Edie Bouvier-Beale, offer incisive portraits of their former owners. Was there a time when you decided very consciously that you were just going to set up as an artist, photographer, and not mess around with any sort of commercial work?
I had a hard time doing both. You know, I did commercial photography and I had 2 kids and,
Right.
you know, a dog and a house, and I didn't feel like I had time really left to do my own work. But I did kind of dabble in it when I had time. And then I guess it was 2008, the recession, when like every magazine closed. I mean, literally there was very little work.
Right.
And I was already living out in the Hamptons, so I wasn't working as much, and then the work really dried up. So I just had time, and I just started to play. And I was 49, I guess. So when I was 50, I said, enough of that. I really want to do fine art, and it kind of just worked out.
Was still life the genre you worked in because of just sort of where you were and the time you had and things like that? Or
I always liked still life. I mean, you know, if I'm going to go all the way back and talk about college, I did portraits. I did these large format Palladium portraits, but I kind of treated my subjects like objects. Like, come over here. You know, I was very precise about the way things were arranged. And then I found out when I went into the commercial world and I thought I'd do portraits that it didn't work out unless I got to choose the subjects. I couldn't just make everyone look sort of my way. So
I read somewhere you said something like you like the sort of limitations of it, like it's a place that feels limited, but you can create sort of endless possibilities from it, right? Do you want to talk about the project you did during COVID? There's like 7 objects.
7 things again and again.
Right.
When I told you that the recession time, I actually did one of those projects then, just to like have some structure and get going. And I took 7 things and just kept shooting them and playing with them. And I never really showed them to anyone. But then when COVID, I came back from my residency in Bologna and really was in quarantine before everyone else. And then I just decided, you know, I had to mark the time. I had to have something to show for it. I had to do something. I had to get in the studio. So I did that project, and it was really fun because I got, you know, I had to find some kind of expansiveness from these very limited things.
You work with books, you work with the recent series with Morandi, you're obviously working with similar things like jars and jugs and vessels, but do you choose the objects mostly for aesthetic reasons, or are you thinking a lot about like the content of books?
Well, mostly I just photograph books. The COVID project was an exception. But yeah, so that's sort of my limitation. That's just sort of what I would do. If I chose shoes, I'd probably, you know, just keep going with shoes. But books really work out because I love the scale, the paper, the geometry. You know, I can build pictures with them. That's probably, you know, what I like best. And then, because I've been doing it for so many years, the content, of course, starts to become part of the different projects.
Right. I mean, it just occurs to me that books actually relate to photography as mediums, as technologies in a certain way. Books are paper, photography is on paper. Books are mass-produced, photographs are mass-produced. They do have these like DNA kinds of similarities in a certain way. And also kind of becoming obsolete, right, with digital.
Yeah, I mean, I think about Fox Talbot and the Pencil of Nature. You know, that is the first, I guess, commercially or mass-produced photo book. And the fact that he thought of that right at the beginning, you know, and sort of presage this whole long trajectory of the printed image in a book.
Right, which really kind of throws off our society's idea of art as every artwork is a precious, unique thing. You know, photography's always been so destabilizing that way in the art world. A number of the projects you've done have dealt with a certain person's library, for example. Little Edie at Grey Gardens, I want to go back to that. But recently, Morandi, you had a residency. You were able to look at his books and spend some time with them and photograph them.
The whole circularity of the Morandi project was that, I guess, was 2008, and that was when the Morandi show was at the Met, the retrospective. And I left there with an assignment for myself, not 7 things, but just to find some objects that I could treat the same way, that I could leave them on a table by a window and visit them and sort of reconfigure them, and just, you know, over a long period of time.
They're all in Italian?
No, a lot of them were French. It's like 600 volumes, and most
they
of them
art
are art books.
books?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are from, they're early, like, the teens, 19, and those are all French. And they're sort of paperbacks, and they're small, and they have, tipped in plates, a lot of black and white. And I thought, how interesting that he's learning a lot of the French art from these books, and everything is small and black and white. Once I started showing my work around and people started inviting me, said, oh, like you should go to the Watermill Center and do Robert Wilson's library. And I just had this, like how would that be to go and do that, starting with books and then doing Morandi's books. So eventually, I wrote a proposal and they invited me to come and work there.
And how much do you decide what book to include based on like the title or the contents of it?
The object had to have the right kind of color and shape and presence, and then a lot of the some of the titles I wanted to show through in a very quiet way.
When you finally come home because of the COVID lockdowns that happened, you fly back to New York and start kind of resume the series at a certain point, right?
Right.
And then you reintroduced glassine as a material in the photographs.
Yeah. So when I returned, the project was not finished by any means, and I felt really, disappointed that I hadn't gotten to this point. But I had, a lot of material, and I tried to think how to work on it without returning. And so I started adding materials to it, mostly pieces from books, and I had some glassine. And the glassine, because you can see through it and it has a patina, and it sort of has, an edge and a fragility. It acts like a frame and a filter. I thought it was sort of the perfect element to add to these sort of unfinished.
Let's talk about, because everyone loves this story, but Grey Gardens and Little Edie's books, the house was sold many years ago and it was kind of fixed up, right? But her books were still there. Do you want to tell?
Yeah, well, of course there's
story?
a story. It's so funny. I just have to say, like, out in the Hamptons, everyone has a Grey Garden story. It's
Right.
like everybody is related. It's 6 degrees of Grey Garden, so it's pretty funny. So Sally Quinn bought the house from Little Edie back in the 70s. The story goes that when she had a big dumpster outside and they were, cleaning out the house of all the nasty squirrel stuff and everything that accumulated, the workers were putting the books along with everything else in the dumpster. And Sally Quinn drove up and was like, no books in the dumpster. And she had people take them out. She kept every book she could, and she put them back on the shelves. And they remained there the entire time she owned the house until, 2017, when the house was for sale. And someone told me that the books were there, and I think there was a little piece of it in the Paris Review. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, because I lived, a few miles away. So I called Sally Quinn, and she was really nice. She was like, oh, great idea, yeah, go ahead, And the poor realtor had to keep letting me in and out. And that's why I ended up doing these very simple typologies of the book covers.
The cloth covers are deeply saturated with pigment, but kind of unraveling a little bit. And
I think just being in the sea, it's really close to the ocean, and a lot of them were left in this sunroom. So the spines are all faded, and then when you take it off the shelf, the pigment is sort of like powder through whatever cloth cover. They're really remarkable, just as objects. So they were just sort of performing for me.
And these are pretty straightforward. You're just photographing the covers and with the titles, but they're so evocative. They seem to relate so much to Edie's particular complexes and interests.
Neuroses.
Right, neuroses.
Release from nervous tension is a
Right.
good one.
Right.
Why Men Like Us, that's one of my favorites. And there were some really campy, kooky ones, but I didn't include those because I really thought it changed the whole tenor of the project. I wanted there to be, some dignity and some poignancy and empathy for it, the layering of stories.
There is a sadness to the whole thing. It's not just, their lives weren't just to entertain us, now,
Right.
One of my favorite series is the Standing Open series, which almost has a voyeuristic feel to it. And how did you develop that series?
Just one of those great chance things. When I was doing the paperbacks, they started splaying open, and I saw these sort of shadowy areas and one page reflecting on another page, and there was just a lot of beautiful formal stuff that was happening, and the stripes. So I moved the camera close up, so it was just stripes and glimpses of the pages, and I started taking my own books down, mostly photo books, and I just thought it was such a great way to relook at my books.
The ocean series, you live close to the ocean.
I photographed the ocean for so many years because I walked my dog every day, and I thought I should bring a camera, and then I really got to know it, like almost like a naturalist. But since I always wanted to do still life, I had these images, and window light would come and hit the print, and so again I was rephotographing photographs, which is something I do a lot. For me, just light on paper, it's just magical, and to then have the sea. So that was a really fun project where I just sort of took the prints all over my house where light was coming in through skylights or blinds, and worked with that on the prints.
I was going to say another relation between photography and what we're talking about is holding on to experiences of the world. I mean, the containment of something, the intimate preservation of it, right?
From the beginning, albums.
Yeah, personal, intimate, yeah.
I'm sort of trying to do all these things without ever taking pictures of humans.
Mary Ellen Bartley's exhibition, Morandi's Books, closed at Yancey Richardson Gallery in New York in December and is now on view at the Drawing Room in East Hampton, New York until February 27th.